Immaculate Genocide. American liberals support Immaculate Genocide. The first concentration camps in the world were during the Boer War by the British in South Africa. The second country was America in the Philippine-American War. Writing of the Holocaust perpetrated by U.S. troops in the Philippines a century ago, an onslaught entailing orders that every male Filipino over the age of 10 be slaughtered, and the resulting deaths of 1 in 6 inhabitants of the island of Luzon, historian Stuart Creighton Miller described the tendency of highly patriotic Americans to vociferously deny such abuses and even to assert that they could never exist in their country. The pattern is unmistakably similar to that exhibited by severe alcoholics who, despite all evidence of the damage their behavior has caused, chronically insists that the opposite of everything is true. And again, criticism of the conservative. More subtle than the characteristic refusal of conservatives to allow mere facts to in any way alter their core presumptions is the comparatively nature of the alternative interpretations most often poised by the progressive opponents. Noting that the Philippine genocide was a matter of public knowledge by 1901, Creighton Miller goes on to observe that collective amnesia over the horrors of the War of Conquest set in early during the summer of 1902. He then concludes by reflecting upon how anti-imperialists aided the process by insisting that the conflict and its attendant atrocities had been the result of a conspiracy by a handful of leaders who carried out, through deceit and subterfuge, the policy and means of expansion overseas against the will of the majority of their countrymen. Again, on conservatives. By refusing to acknowledge that most Americans had been bitten by the same bug that afflicted Roosevelt, Lodge, and Beveridge, the presidents at the time, President Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, anti-imperialists were letting the people off the hook and, in their own way, preserving the American sense of innocence. Unfortunately, the man in the street shared the dreams of world power status, martial glory, and future wealth that would follow expansion. When the dream soured, the American people neither reacted with much indignation, nor did they seem to retreat to their cherished political principles. If anything, they seemed to take their cues from the leaders in the White House by first putting out of mind all the sordid episodes in the conquest, and then forgetting the entire war itself. So it was then more so today. Contemporary conservatives, whenever they could be monetarily boxed into conceding one or another unsavory aspect of America's historical record, are forever insisting that whatever they've admitted can be properly understood only when viewed as an exception to the rule, an aberration, atypical to the point of anomalousness. None have shown a readiness to address the question of exactly how much anomalies might be required before they can be said to compromise the rule itself. When pressed, conservatives invariably retreat into a level of divisionary polemic excusable at best on elementary school playgrounds, arguing that anything we have done is somehow excused by allegations that they have done things that are just as bad. And now we come to progressives. The Immaculate Genocide. American liberals support Immaculate Genocide. Progressives, on the other hand, while acknowledging many of America's more reprehensible features, have become far more refined in offering hook-free analysis than they were in 1902. No longer much preoccupied with such crudities as conspiracy theory, they have become quite monolithic in attributing all things negative to handy abstractions like capitalism, the state, structural oppression, and yes, the hierarchy. Hence, they have been able to conjure that what might be termed the miracle of immaculate genocide, a form of genocide that is, in which, apart from a few amorphous decision-making elites, there are no actual perpetrators, and no one who might really be deemed culpable by reason of complicity. The parallels between the cutting-edge conception and the defense mounted by post-war Germans, including the Nazis at Nuremberg, are as eerie as they are obvious. Hitler's Willing's executioners. I created this Wikipedia page some years ago. Hitler's Willing Executioners, Ordinary Germans and the Holocaust is a 1996 book by American writer Daniel Gulhong, in which he argues that the vast majority of ordinary Germans were willing executioners in the Holocaust because of a unique and virulent eliminist anti-Semitism in German political culture which had developed in the preceding centuries, just like American exceptionalism and the idea that the white man's burden, as it was called in Britain before. Goldhun argues that eliminationist anti-Semitism was the cornerstone of German national identity, was unique to Germany, and because of its ordinary German conscripts killed Jews willingly. Goldhun asserts that the mentality grew out of medieval attitudes rooted in religion and was later secularized. And based on our very violent history as Americans, the majority of time we've spent more time in war than we actually have in peace. We're a very unique country in that we have spent more years in war, significantly more, than in peace.
Well, thank you for this incredible deep insight, and I'm sure the viewers cannot thank you enough for giving this unconventional analysis that really helps us understand rather than demonize Putin and the whole system there. I want to switch gears and ask you a couple of pointed questions. Are you surprised that so many of the Americans, of the American public, after being lied to for 2 years by mainstream media about masks, about lockdowns, about vaccines, about mandates, they're perfectly happy to blindly buy the narrative about Russia's invasion in Ukraine, that, Putin just woke up one day for no reason whatsoever, no basis whatsoever, or how they say unprovoked and unjustified. He just went in. Are you surprised that so many people are buying it without checking it for themselves?
No, I'm not. I'm not surprised at all. Again, we need to answer that question. We need to first talk about your average American. I'm not talking. Look, every time I say average American, I get immediate feedback.
On my webpage, MoscowAmerican.com, there is what's called the values Americans live by. And this explains, it's by Robert Coles, please look it up, and it talks about how Americans think they are so unique, but in reality they're really not. And there are several values that they have, every one of us have. Personal control over the environment, change seen as natural and positive, time and its control, equality and fairness, individualism and privacy, self-help and initiative, competition and free enterprise, future orientation, action work orientation, informality, directness, openness, and honesty, practical efficiency, materialism, and acquisitiveness. And so the author, Robert Coles, he argues that even though Americans think that they're so individualistic, in reality they're not. And living here in Moscow, I've realized that Americans, as an American, especially in his late middle age, that I am so American. And if you live in a culture that's so radically different from your own, that's when you start understanding how you're not very unique. And I'm telling you, Americans listening to this, you're not very unique.
From people who say, I'm not like that. Okay, you're not the average American then. I'm just talking about the average American who doesn't have a PhD in Russian area studies, who doesn't have a master's degree in Russian area studies, who doesn't even have a bachelor's degree in Russian area studies, who's never studied anything about Russia at all. That's the vast majority of Americans. And they don't want to study Russia. I mean, they're not intellectually curious about Russia. They don't have time to be intellectually curious. It's tough being an American. I mean, we have this thing called the American dream that everybody's chasing, the house, 2 cars in the garage, the perfect family. Everybody's chasing this dream, and very few are able to actually catch it. And when you do catch it, it's hard to hold on to. You got husbands and wives working, both fully employed. Sometimes they have to work 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet, so you can pay that mortgage, pay the car payment. By the time they come home, they aren't going to be going to night school to learn Russian, or study Russian area studies. They aren't going to, log on to the internet and study Russian. They're going to sit down in front of the TV after a dinner, and they've got about 30 minutes max where they're going to watch the news. But they don't, they just had a hard day at work. The last thing they want to do is think. They want to be entertained. So the purpose of the news media is to entertain them. Now, entertainment can come in several forms. I mean, you just look at movies. We got comedies, we got horror movies, we got dramas, we got military. So it doesn't mean that entertainment has to be laughs. War is the greatest entertainment there is. War is, people will tune in to watch a war every single time it happens. So they're entertained. Crime is a huge entertainment. So the more riots you have in the street, the more people are going to watch it on TV. That's just the way it is. If it bleeds, it leads. That's an old, TV say, or TV saying. So these people just don't have the time to learn this. They want to be wrapped in a cocoon of comfort. That's the American dream. Comfort. It's consumer-based comfort. I go out and buy things that make me happy. And I wrap myself in this. And as long as I can sit in my little cocoon of comfort and nobody bothers me, I'm happy. Now, when somebody comes in and bothers me, I get unhappy. That's why you saw in COVID, people got a little unhappy because it bothered their cocoon of comfort. But that was an immediate impact on their reality. Russia doesn't have an immediate impact. Even this, the energy prices right now, they call it Putin's tax, but it's not. It's just it's Biden's bad policy. It's just all it is. It's bad policy on the part of an elected official. And the people that buy into the notion of Putin's tax means that they don't know anything about Putin. They don't know anything about Russia. They don't know anything about what's really going on. And this is the hard part, because here you and I are having this conversation. And I would bet that the people who watch this are not your average Americans. The people who watch this are actually people who have taken the time to taken their precious time, by the way, because time is a precious commodity, and they've taken their precious time and they've decided, this is how I want to spend my time, furthering my studies and furthering my knowledge about Russia. I joke about this, but I have some friends. We used to go to Monday Night Football before COVID came. Maybe we'll start doing it again. But back when I was doing the Iraq thing, and they were all like, oh, Scott, this is pretty serious stuff. I said, yeah, we may go to war. You guys might want to learn. Well, we don't have the time to put into it like you do. This was your life. This is what you did. So you got the knowledge, and so we're gonna trust you on that. And I said, okay, I understand that. Then we'd watch football, and the first thing, the coach calls a play, they go, that's the wrong play to call. This was a 3rd down and 3. You don't send the fullback up. Statistically speaking, da 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 da. I say, how do you guys know all this? Oh, well, we read the sports page. I said, so you've decided that learning sports trivia, sports statistics, is more important than learning about why America might go to war.
Noam Chomsky, the top 10 most quoted author in the world right now, who most Americans don't know. A very anti-imperialist, very anti-American foreign policy. And he is also a linguistic superstar at MIT. When I was in high school, I asked myself at one point, why do I care if my high school team wins the football game? I don't know anybody on the team. They have nothing to do with me. Why am I here? And applaud. It does not make any sense. But the point is, it does make sense. It's a way of building up irrational attitudes of submission to authority and group cohesion behind leadership elements. In fact, it's training in irrational jingoism. That's also a feature of competitive sports.
The answer was yes, because that's what was important to them. That's what made their life complete, not the war in Iraq. And right now, today, we have people who, look, let's again be honest. Unless you're a Russian American or a Ukrainian American, this war doesn't impact you. It doesn't. It's entertainment. We want to turn it on. We want to see the sexy videos. We want to go, ooh, boom, the Russians fired another missile. Oh, boom, the Ukrainians destroyed a Russian tank. Oh, boom, a ship got sunk. Oh, boom, that's entertainment. We don't equate it to reality. We don't sit there and go, those are people suffering. I mean, look, people say, of course we do. No, you don't. Because if you did, then you'd get angry. If you got angry, you'd get involved. If you got involved, you'd get informed. If you got informed, you'd realize the government's lying through their teeth about everything that's happening over there. And then you'd want to do something to try and change the policy. But instead, you just sit there and get entertained by this all. And that's what's happening. People are just getting entertained by the deaths of Ukrainians and the deaths of Russians.
It is quite frustrating that people rise up and protest about things of some importance, relatively low importance, over and over. And yet when it comes to things of huge importance, of global importance, you see no uprisings, no protests of any kind. It's a little bit disappointing, but I guess such is the world, or such is the culture that we live in.
Point at you, you do a shot. You get a total double, and you see all of the chicken.
Excuse me, Mr. Douglas.
During the Hotel Rwanda, or rather the Rwanda genocide, President Clinton, he had just, this was a PBS Frontline report, he had just, on the mall is the Holocaust Memorial Museum, and he was there to christen it. And when he christened it, he said that we want to make sure that it will never happen again. And so then he turned immediately around and he ignored the Rwanda genocide. And Madeleine Albright, the other war criminal, who had felt that the 500,000 Iraqi babies dying in Iraq was worth it, they ignored the genocide. The bottom line is that the United States does not care about people individually. The United States cares about money, and they care about, if Africa's poor, they don't care. And so here is a quote from the incredible movie Hotel Rwanda.
I point at you, you do a shot. You get a total double, and you see all of the chicken.
Excuse me, Mr. Douglas.
Hey, whoa. Listen. Sorry about earlier. If I'd known you were in there, I wouldn't have...
I am glad that you have shot this footage and that the world will see it. It is the only way we have a chance that people might intervene.
Yeah, and if no one intervenes, it's still a good thing to show.
How can they not intervene when they witness such atrocities?
I think if people see this footage, they'll say, oh my God, that's horrible. And then go on eating their dinners. What the hell do I know? Listen, More just for once.
I have more work to do. Thank you for your offer. Please enjoy your evening, Mr. Deckridge.
Let me ask you a few more questions before we talk about your book, last but not least. You mentioned sanctions earlier. So many Western and U.S. corporations instantly and seemingly permanently pulled out of Russia. Every clothing brand, every furniture brand, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, you name it. Now, we live in a capitalistic society, and we're used to criticizing those corporations for only caring about the bottom line and about the corporate profits. These companies were not ordered by any government to pull out. Why did they all gang up on Russia and pull out immediately? Why? I don't think there's even one single company that said, you know what, we're going to put politics aside and we're going to stay in Russia. We're just going to focus on making money. Like, what is behind this?
Well, I mean, and again, I have to say, I'm not sitting on the board of directors of any of these companies, so I don't have personal insight. But what I will point out is that in America today, we have a what's called the cancel culture, and so we there's a knee-jerk reaction that if somebody's perceived about doing something that there's widespread agreement represents reprehensible behavior, that they need to be canceled, that we can have nothing to do with them. It's over. We see that in Hollywood a lot. You know, when an actor gets drunk and says some stuff, suddenly we're not watching his or her movies anymore. You know, we cancel them out. In the case of of Russia, we've been demonizing Vladimir Putin in Russia for a long time now. I mean, literally, he is a cartoon character that's been turned into, you know, the world's most evil man, and we've done that with the Russian people too, because, you know, think about it for a second. If Vladimir Putin's the most evil man in the world and he's been there for 22 years, what's that say about the Russian people for allowing him to continue? They must be evil too. They must be bad people that we can't do business with. We have to cancel them. And so that's what's happening. And I believe that many of the decisions that are being made by these companies are business decisions, because, you know, as big as the market is in Russia, it's bigger over in the United States. It's bigger in Europe. And if they stayed in Russia, they could get canceled altogether in the United States and Europe. So this was a hard-nosed business decision, which is we're not going to do the right thing, meaning that we're not going to stand up and say, hey, look, we've been over here working in Russia for 2 decades now. The Russian people are A-OK. This is a policy disagreement with, you know, it's a policy, you know, disagreement. But we're maybe we'll pause right now because of sanctions, but, you know, we plan on coming back because this is a good market. These are good people. These are good customers. This is what we want to do. But that's not the cancel culture. I think that's what's happening here. This is purely an extension of the cancel culture that has permeated everything in the United States lately.
Now, to focus a little bit more on the news media and hate for Russians, what is really behind this bipartisan warmongering? Let's go to war. Let's give more weapons. Let's fight Russia till the last Ukrainian soldier. Is it really only coming down to the military-industrial complex and making money? Are politicians really willing to take the risk of escalation, World War III or whatever, just to make an extra buck? Or is there more?
No, I don't think. I personally think that the issue of making an extra buck. We don't need to bark. You know, making an extra buck. I think he's barking at you. The military-industrial complex is about making money. It's just like any business. It's about making money. But they make money off of U.S. taxpayer dollars that are allocated by Congress. So let's stop pretending that this has only to do with Lockheed Martin and Raytheon. It doesn't. This has everything to do with the United States Congress, who makes policies and and implements those policies. And Congress it takes its direction from the voters, meaning what the voters will allow is what Congress will do.
There was a boycott McDonald's began trending on Twitter, and also this is an article from The Conversation, to protest its presence in Russia after the fast food chain then said it was temporarily closing its stores there. This is the Apple, Disney, IKEA, and hundreds of other Western companies are abandoning Russia with barely a shrug. And this is The Conversation.
I don't think this is about just military industry. I don't think this is about making money. This is about stupidity and ignorance. First of all, the United States is very much a nation that has war in its DNA. We've been at war for the vast majority of our history. We worship war. We worship our military. We put our military on a pedestal. We treat them all as heroes. And people say, well, they are heroes. Not really. Some people do heroic things, but
the point of public relations slogans like support our troops is that they don't mean anything. That's the whole point of good propaganda. You want to create a slogan that nobody is going to be against, and I suppose everybody will be for, because nobody knows what it means, because it doesn't mean anything. But its crucial value is that it diverts your attention from a question that does mean something. Do you support a policy? And that's the one you're not supposed to talk about. Noam Chomsky. This is 2020. The U.S. has been at war 225 out of its 240 years since 1776. So there's only been 18 years where America has not been at war in its entire history. 18 years. That's unique of any other country. The U.S. has been at war for more than 92% of its history. Howard's in, there is no flag large enough to cover the shame of killing innocent people.
I don't think this is about just military industry. I don't think this is about making money. This is about stupidity and ignorance. First of all, the United States is very much a nation that has war in its DNA. We've been at war for the vast majority of our history. We worship war. We worship our military. We put our military on a pedestal. We treat them all as heroes. And people say, well, they are heroes. Not really. Some people do heroic things, but simply joining the military does not make you a hero. It means you took a job. You get trained to do that job. But, you know, we feel that we have to make everything about, you know, the red, white, and blue, glory, charging the hill, hoorah, let's go. Everything has to be that dramatic moment. Every moment has to be that dramatic moment. Every conflict has to be about, you know, that Hollywood, you know, imagery and all that stuff. And we don't focus on what war really is. It's about people killing people. That's it. That's all war is about. It's about.
So why are they all supporting this? Why do they all?
Because they don't understand that. They only watch it on TV. They watch it in the movie theater. They think, you know, if Saving Private Ryan wasn't just visually stimulating, but we had a button that you could push so you could smell what guts smell like. I don't mean to be too crude here, or when they pass by the bodies, let's smell what a body smells like 3 days after sitting out in the sun. Oh, that's a nice smell. When the smell of war is something that the average American has no clue about. That's why they like it. You won't find a genuine combat veteran that'll sit there and tell you how wonderful war is. Fact is, at the end of the Second World War, almost every combat veteran wouldn't talk about it. They didn't glorify it. They thought it was horrible. They were ashamed. Many people who go through combat are ashamed of what they've done because it's about killing people. It's difficult. So the average American has no clue whatsoever. So they've bought into this romanticized notion of the glorious defense of Ukraine. not realizing that every time we send another $100 million over there, we're condemning 50, 60,000 Ukrainians to death. And again, death isn't glorious. It's not what they think it is. These bodies are being torn apart by artillery. They're having their lungs sucked out by thermobaric weapons. It's just, or they get gut shot and then they crawl into a corner and they spend the next 36 to 42 hours painfully bleeding out until they get sepsis and they die of a painful infection all by themselves. That's what war is, but we don't focus on that. We think it's glory. We think it's wonderful. We're providing these weapons to the brave Ukrainian defenders. We're fighting the evil Russian invaders. We don't deal with the reality of it. If we did deal with the reality of it, I don't think too many Americans would ever support this.
Would you agree, Scott, that if America wanted to make a deal today, they could have brought Russia to the table, give in to their demands, reasonable demands within reason? I believe you believe that their demands are unreasonable, and put an end to it in an instant.
I don't know nowadays, to be honest, because I think we could have done that. I think that's something that could have happened early on in this conflict. But to be honest, I think Russia suffered too many dead, too many wounded, too many losses. Russia's in no mood to go. Russia has paid too heavy of a price now to give the Americans anything. The Americans don't get to come to the table now and try and negotiate a settlement that's beneficial to the United States. You missed that window of opportunity. I think right now Russia's in the business of seeing this difficult task through in a way that best benefits Russia, which means they're going to solve some of the very difficult problems that existed that the United States could have helped with before we, remember Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, our job is to make Russia pay a heavy price, to make Russia hurt, to kill Russians. I mean, that became the U.S. policy. So why would Russia ever want to sit down with Americans now? I wouldn't want to go anywhere near the United States because you're the guys who wanted to. Remember how angry the United States, how we got here in America when the rumors came over about the Russians paying the Taliban for bounties, and how absolutely outraged. It was a false story. It never happened. But how outraged we were that the Russians would pay the Taliban to kill Americans.
NBC News. Remember those Russian bounties for dead U.S. troops? Biden says the CIA intel is not conclusive. In other words, it was a lie.
True on the media. Yeah, they wanted it.
They definitely wanted it to be true. But now, and again, when you parse it down, you say, well, why do you believe it? They came down to one incident that took place outside of Bagram Air Base where I think 2 or 3 Americans were killed. 2 or 3 Americans, that's a bad thing. But they're saying that was what they think was the Taliban killing Americans using Russian bounty money, but it turned out not to be true. 2 or 3 Americans, and we're outraged as a nation. We've implemented policies that are killing thousands of Russians. And we expect the Russians just to be okay with this? I don't think so.
Politicians really need to think before they say things like, let's weaken Russia or let's bring Russia to its knees, like the British guy said. They really need to think long and hard before they say that.